Hello everybody. Got people still coming in, so it's lovely to see everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Got 7 people for today, so I'm excited to get into the swing of things. Before we get started, let me grab my jug of water. Hello, Andrea! It's been a while. How are you doing? Oh, let's do this first. Yeah. How are you doing, Andrea? It's been a while. Lovely to see you back. Got a Connor B in the chat saying howdy. You forgot the cowboy emoji there, Connor. Come on. Lovely to see you too. And then Sheila, kicking ass on the latest project, making time to be here, so appreciate it. It's awesome. I'm a lurker, you know, even when it comes to like our own community. I love lurking in the chat, and it's really nice to see your work develop over time. So it's been awesome. Andrea saying, I'm doing okay. How are you? It's been a while. Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Busy schedule. We're really ramping up on the course now, which maybe I kind of want to give like a little sneak peek on. I was kind of debating if I wanted to do it. So let me see. Maybe I'll do that in a little bit before we get started. Basically what it comes down to, allow me to bore you for a second, right? But I'm currently building tools that will make it easier for us to update the course lessons. So what I'm basically doing is building like the building blocks of the course, so that whatever we add in Notion, right, which is like the tool that we use to like type up and outsource and like whatever, that's basically where we aggregate all the people and they write their lessons. I'm building tools that we can then do like a one-click export, and it will set it up on the website. So if we ever want to do an update to a lesson, we can like immediately do that without having to go back and forth between the website and stuff. Very technical. I'm having a lot of fun with it though. Like I really enjoy that kind of stuff. And I'm also writing like a couple of lessons still. Most of the lessons that I'm writing actually are on like the art fundamentals. Maybe I'll give you like a sneak peek of the color theory class that I've been working on. But yeah, let's do that. So to give you all some context, the course, for those who don't know, we've been working on this course for a while. But what we want to do with this course is like fully go into a niche of environment art, right? And what that means to me is like basically covering from the beginning. So that means like the art fundamentals, getting into it, like getting into modeling, all that kind of stuff, all the way to the end where we kind of support you getting into the industry as well with like resources on how to build a good portfolio, CV, all that kind of stuff. But let me actually show what that looks like. I might have to switch over here. Hold on, give me a second. So much stuff happening on screen. Okay. Which cam is that? Is that this one? No. Dang it. Okay, let's do it this way then. Sorry for the interruption. Oh. Chat box is screwed. Bear with me for a second. So yeah, this is one of the lessons that I'm building on color theory. So we're basically going to be breaking down like the different aspects of color theory, like having like physical versus oh, I think my camera's gone as well. Let me get that back. There we go. The differences between like the physical, like print media and actual digital media, going into the color wheel, and like how it actually plays on our emotions as well. So there's a whole bunch of examples on like the effects of our emotions and how we can get into like authoring that as like an environment artist, right? So this is all work in progress, but it has like a lot of examples of like, hey, this is how you could use it. You could, and the different kind of color schemes that you could use it and how games use them as well. For example, little sneak peek, The Last of Us 2, yeah, uses it to like really make dramatic scenes, right? But yeah, this is the sort of stuff that we want to dive into really, and just really help you get to grips with like the fundamentals and like kind of breaking down like how to use them and how to apply them in your own work. And this is only one. This is going to change. The number is going to change, but this is one lesson out of currently, and I think we're going to end up with slightly more. I think eventually we will end up, let me see, what was our latest estimate? I think for the track that we're currently working for, we're going to end up with like 30 lessons or something like that. And it would be from art fundamentals to like a more technical side, and then going all the way up to having all the skills to get to environment art. So, and then we got like a couple of exercises that I still need to work on here. But yeah, I just wanted to give like a little sneak peek. Maybe it would be cool to do like little sneak peeks like here and there, you know, just to keep everyone up to date with how the course is going along. Because I tend not to do that much. But we're really getting into the routine now. And we're going to be ramping up and reaching out to like a bunch of people that want to build content soon. So yeah, I just thought I'd show that off. Such a tease. Yeah, I mean, I've been working on this for like a year now, right? So there's like a bunch of stuff that's happening in the background, like all the systems set up and all that. So I'm proud of it, you know? I'm feeling really good about it. If you don't know, we'll probably do some early testing pretty soon. The current idea, and this is sort of like the latest iteration, is that we will open it up to the community for a certain amount of time before we then lock it between like a higher tier that is going to have like additional support and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but we still have to refine that. I just want to be as transparent as I can be. But yeah, just want to be open. Cool. Let's switch back, shall we? Because we need to do some feedback today. Let's see. Rightly so, and you said you're using Notion as the base for it. I mean, Notion is just a way where we organize like the writing, right? Like everything kind of gets organized in Notion. And then, because the way that I use Notion is we have like a dashboard for everything. So all the information gets collected in Notion, and then we do everything in Notion, and then we dish everything out again. So like I said a couple of times before, I've built my own social media calendar so that we can schedule posts in Notion and they automatically get posted to a bunch of different platforms. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that. So everything is kind of built on top of Notion, and that's our like HQ, and then we go outwards from there. But yeah. Quick little overview here. But let's actually dive into some work. So this is a question. So this is very niche, right? Like building your own social media calendar as like an artist or all that kind of stuff. Would that be of interest for people? If I would do like a deep dive into that, let's say for the future BE Unwrapped, sorry. Because I'm thinking about the idea of, I will probably tie it into the broader idea on how to market yourself properly as an artist, right? But I do want to hint on those like automation tools and all that kind of stuff as well, and how you can, and there's different tiers of them and how you can use them as well. Because I've used a lot of them over the years. So I think that would be quite cool. Sad is saying, I usually use Notion and Miro and link them together. Yeah. That's cool as well. It feels like it's necessary at this point to have other artists see you and be able to network better. That was always a necessity, right? I'll get a book. Non-sponsored, by the way. But this is a book from Austin Kleon. Show your work. It's a really good book on this exact topic, and it's really just like, it's very condensed, as you can see. But the idea behind it is that you can make really cool stuff, but if no one sees it, then you have to like put it out there somehow, right? So, I mean, that's why a platform like ArtStation exists and all that kind of stuff, right? It's meant to kind of incentivize you to like share more work, and then the whole likes and like all that kind of stuff is tied into it. But it's definitely good to like be able to market yourself, because marketing can be applied to so many things, right? So let's say you ever want to, I don't know, build your first product as an artist. You can then use those skills that you've learned as an artist in your, I don't know, your asset packs, for example, that you want to sell, right? So those things like translate really well. All right. Sounds really interesting. I'll think about it. I'll give it a good think, because I do have like a bunch of other topics that I want to do for BE Unwrapped as well. But yeah, let's switch it over, shall we? We're gonna be diving into Whip Wednesday, which is our weekly format where I basically go through the community's work and I will give them feedback based on whether they want it, and they can basically, the community can basically tag their work up, and then I'll give them feedback, and then they can do that every week if they wanted to. So yeah, let's have a look. Let me get the Discord up as well. I think for this week I am just gonna do voice only, so I'm not gonna be jumping into the actual event room to invite people on, just so that we can get some speed and I can get back to work after it as well. So let's have a look. Let's start with Swan. So Swan is working on a fishmonger, which is looking really cool already. This project was to hone in on texturing and an intro to ZBrush. Okay, awesome. An introduction to ZBrush as a fish. Dang. Normally people go for like the easy stuff, right? Like the rocks and, I don't know, the rocks in the wood. You go for fish. Okay. So I would like some feedback regarding if the texturing has been pushed enough and if the composition and lighting works really well. So the composition and lighting, it's good, right? If we're really, let me double check here. Did I? Okay. The composition works really nice. Yeah, not too much to say on here, really, on the composition and the lighting. You kind of have like a very typical studio lighting setup, which is not too bad, but most of the time, the thing that really kind of bothers me is how evenly wet it feels, right? There's no variation in the surface, and it just feels like slime all over the place, which is kind of not what you want to create like anything of interest, right? So it feels very uniform. Also, another thing that you usually see on fish is where they have like the scales, right? They kind of have like a certain kind of glow, not a glow, but like they have like a reflective property like in them, right? So if you look at them from different sides, they kind of have this like reflection underneath the skin. It's really tricky to kind of nail that. That is why I was surprised that someone was doing fish, because nailing that is kind of at the core of it, right? But that would be good to have a look at. Let's see, I think also this kind of depends on the fish, but this flesh feels really pale. But for now, it's not really, but that's probably how I would approach it as well, or at least I would give it a try. Hey Mfal! Happy Wednesday! Hello Yoppa! Live again? Yeah. Like the first month of the first week of the month is always like the busiest because I have Tuesdays is portfolio reviews and then Wednesdays is like feedback for the community. So first week is always really packed. But yeah, the flesh feels kind of pale and the normal on the flesh feels like too strong as well. And you probably want some like reflectivity on here as well, because it feels kind of dull feeling, right? So we need to play around with the roughness a little bit more and kind of make it feel like it has that like that meaty kind of texture, right? Because this almost looked like, I don't know, like a canned tuna or something like that. The fins should have a slight translucency at the end. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Especially where you can see through them, right? You kind of want some like subsurface scattering. Especially those areas, right? Where the fisheye should be a glass shader. I mean, it's getting pretty close to it. I think that's the most difficult thing about like getting a fish like this is just you need to make it look wet, but you want the fish to look like really wet, but that also means that like everything on, let's say, the roughness spectrum, right? All the values on like a wet fish are basically going to be in this range, right? So all the values are going to be in this range. So you have to rely on like getting small variation in that range as much as possible without it feeling necessarily like less wet or whatever, right? Let's see, Shubranshu is coming in with some good takes. So let's see, the knife texture should look like rugged and used many times looks. And used like many times, and little drops of blood as well. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, the drops of blood, it can be like dried blood or something like that, right? But definitely way more rugged and just have like a bunch of freaking scratches. Maybe there's like a bigger dent in the knife, right? Especially if you compare the handle, which looks like pretty worn compared to this pristine blade. There's something weird in between them, right? Like, so I agree. The most difficult part is to actually catch it. Mfal, get out. How dare you come in here with your dad jokes? Man, I'm so oblivious to dad jokes. Like, people keep making them around me. And then sometimes I will not even notice what is happening, you know? I'm oblivious to them. This stuff looks good. So this looks like nice and fresh, right? Oh man, when I used to work in like a Chinese restaurant, like doing the dishes, I remember this vividly. Like this chopping block, we had exactly one like this. Chefs keep their knives very well kept. Oh yeah. Like you can have it clean, but it's used, right? So you kind of want to show that it's been aged, but it is still like being used for like a long time, right? So if you look for reference to that, like you're gonna find some stuff immediately, because you kind of have that here, right? It's coming in here, where you see like all these like scratches from like sharpening and all that kind of stuff, but it's just this part feels like too pristine, like nothing ever happened to the blade at all, right? Because you got this like very pristine kind of look. So maybe even just having like those scratches have like an effect on the normal in like the tiniest way, right? It's all about subtlety here, right? Because yeah, they 100% keep it like sharp and clean, but there's still gonna be like signs and wear of tear because something's gonna drop on it and all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm actually not opposed to like how clean it is, right? I'm more opposed to like how not worn it feels, if that makes sense. If we try to separate the two. It should have lipstick on. Mfal, what are you doing here? Oh my god, coming in with like a lipstick on fish. Okay, let me do it for you, you know. What do we go with? Here you go. Got that little smoochy face on the fish. I was saying here though, like you got this fresh stuff. What I would love to see more of is just like the dried blood, like over time, right? Could also be interesting. But yeah, this block of wood, I recognize it. Cool. Perfect. Wood cutting trunk on the outer side should have like tree bark displacement. I don't think there's bark on these like normally. Like it is just rough wood on the outside. If it would have bark, then yeah, for sure. At least the one that I remember didn't really have bark. They stripped the bark and it just kept like the outer layer. Like you said, it's optional. So yeah. Fishy, let's go. So it is optional. So Swan can take that advice and see what he wants to do with that, right? But thank you so much for the suggestions. That is awesome. Let's see if there was something else. Not sure how easy it would be able to do, but the mouth looks like it's sealed. I agree. And it's gonna be annoying to fix that, but I think it is worth fixing it. Just spreading it out just a little bit so that there's actually like a physical divide in the mesh, and you can still keep it closed like that, but you kind of want to have... Oh no, I don't want to move the lips. But you kind of want to have like a little lip. And then like another little lip, right? This is getting weirder and weirder as we give feedback on this. But you kind of want to have like a little lip instead of just having like a physically connected surface that has like normal, that tries to compensate for the fact, right? Because it just doesn't look good. You could potentially still cut in like a lip and then just push it inwards without having to do very clear instructions. Without having to do like any sort of like rebaking or anything like that. You can just cut in like a little lip and then just push it inwards. Especially because it is going to be the focal point right? So people are going to be paying attention to it as well. So let's go for the easiest fix there. To review, make the fish kiss. Oh man. Yeah, we were talking about like unique presentations yesterday on the portfolio streams. This is not what I mean by that, you know, like we don't want to make fish kiss and all that, but yeah. Yeah, and the gills should have a gap as well. I agree. The same can be done on the gills as well, right? You kind of want to have like a little bit of like a physical separation. Again, because we're pushing it so close, right? Like having like an actual physical disconnect there. That would be the way to do it. Yeah, cool, Dom. Thanks so much for sharing your work, Swan. Let me see. Yeah. Oh. I should have read this before. Swan was asking if he could be left until the end of the stream. Sorry, Swan. We kind of did you first. Apologies for that. Moving on. Let's take it in order now. So Mfal is the first one that we have on the community. So, questions. We have 3 different versions here. Do you think the bloom and the intense fog in the background is too distracting, or does it help contrast the buildings from the background? And what sort of colors work best? So we're getting like a way better balance now than we did before. So I think overall it's been really well done. Like really, yeah, just massive improvements here, right? So I love to see it. It kind of gets like into the territory of like, oh, this is like too much bloom. So this is like too bloomy, right? Because what I mean with bloomy is that like the values, so like the white values here, they kind of go lost in the haze because everything is kind of clipping in terms of like the white values, right? So you don't necessarily want to do that, where you want to keep some sort of separation between the different areas if you can. Well, you should, actually. Because that helps readability a lot. Now, in terms of... Okay, let's do a... do we have enough resolution on the stream? We're gonna do a community vote. So I'm gonna tag them up. I'm gonna make sure that everything is like nicely laid out. So let's do it like this. We got A, B, and C. Feel free to cast your vote in the chat, and then I'll continue reading as well. So what sort of colors work best? I tried out warmer and colder colors, as well as combining them, but I can't make a decision. And if you have some tips on making the ground look more presentable as well. Anyone can vote. Yeah, go for it. I mean, from this distance, I'd be curious if people can even notice. Okay, Cole is saying C. Mfal saying C as well. Let's have a look. I like A. It has a warmer tone to it. Cool. Okay, okay. Option A with decreased bloom. Okay. So it's 2-on-2 now. 2 for C, 2 for A. Sheila's saying A as well. No. I was gonna say C. I don't want to be the tiebreaker here. Killed by me saying A. I'm more drawn to A as well. Okay, okay. Interesting. B. Sean coming in with the hot take. In my opinion, A is too warm and C is too contrasty. I can't see much in the background of B though. Okay, cool. So we got 2 more people coming in, C and A. What does that make it? I should do a poll next time. Could be fun. 2. 5 for A. 3 for C. No, I think 6 for A as well. Reconcile between C and A. I like the buildings. I like it between the buildings of A, but the rest of C. Okay, okay. So we're kind of mixing things in. Okay, cool. So it looks like A is the winner. Community voted for A. My vote was gonna be on C, just for the reason that we get like a little bit more color contrast between the brighter tones, right? So you have like the background, which is like warm and nice, and then you have like colder elements coming into the foreground because we're adding in like a bit more blue and a bit more purple in the reflections of the buildings, right? It is a small thing though, so yeah, A or B, A or C are both winners for me. Like in B, like some other people brought up as well, the fog is just a bit too bloomy. So yeah, let's go for A. A is community vote. Cool. But yeah, people made some really good points in there. It depends on what the artist wanted to achieve, from Shubranchu. And Mfal is saying, I'll try to put more time into the post-processing on both of them and see what works best. Maybe I can find a balance. Yeah, I mean, it is something that is going to be refined over time, right? I think if we're looking at the holistic approach again, if we're zooming out, it's more important to kind of fill up like the ground, right? Like that's the major concern that you had. I would see what's out there, what's available out there in terms of like free assets that can sort of tie into it, and then just add like a bunch of them on the floor. You can get away with like a bunch of like relatively cheap stuff anyway because we're so high up. So we can kind of get away with like a lot of stuff. But yeah, I think that was one of your questions, right? So any tips on how to make the ground look more presentable? Just by doing my best to hide it with more buildings, or maybe some more intense fog as well. I would definitely try to include like a little bit of fog, because that is just like more in line with like what the concept art was doing as well, right? And it kind of works with like the mood. And it's gonna potentially brighten up the space a little bit more. But the majority of things is just like infrastructure, right? So having like the street lights, having like cars on here. It's all the typical stuff, right? Like just trying to make it feel believable. And just have like, I don't know, like a couple of people. And then you can start filling up. Like at this point, if you're gonna introduce like a little bit of fog, the only thing that you need is just, you need shapes, right? That's all you care about at this point. So they don't need to be like hyper detailed like humans or hyper detailed cars. You kind of just want like shapes to kind of give the representation of, hey, there's cool stuff happening on the floor, right? Because depending on how you're gonna hide it, you can get away with a lot of stuff down there. It's more to give the indication of like, oh, there's actually like a lot of stuff going on. Right? And then you can kind of repeat like the street lights, like the street lanterns up there. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that you can do, and that's going to fill up these spaces as well. And then it would literally be like some entrances to the buildings. Maybe there's like a big basketball court or something like that. I'm trying to think in terms of like simple assets that are like really quick to make and take up like a whole bunch of space, right? And then get some like generic trash and just start like cluttering it up, you know? But the only stuff that you really need to worry about is just, yeah, the main focal points, right? Like the main spaces where we're going to be seeing this stuff. Because again, we're looking at it from this angle, right? Make a city sim on the ground, caught it. Yep. Yep. And make it hyper realistic as well, right? I want to see like individual like nostril hairs on every character that you put on the floor. Otherwise, it's not good enough, you know? Like that's the bar that we're setting. Okay? That'll be fucking nuts. Oh my god. Let's not do that. Let's just try to get away with as much as we can, shall we? Yeah. But I think that's what I would do. Like, I would try simple shapes and then see how much you need doing to kind of cover up like how simple it might look, right? Too hardcore. It is in Unreal Engine, yes. Maybe we're doing some streetlights in the blueprint with the lights so you can adjust them all together, maybe. I mean, Mfal is going like the technical route, so he'll have like a clever solution to this. College is saying, at what point would you commit to one and not be dividing time between multiple shots for too long? Oh, I would honestly, the way that I would do it is, right, is I would just like change the lighting conditions, render, change the lighting conditions, render, change the lighting conditions, render, save them as like images somewhere, and then just keep working with the latest one that you have. Because honestly, like these small tweaks, you just have to do them at the end. And sometimes it's good to have those renders in your back pocket so that you can go back to them and be like, oh, I kind of liked what was happening here, right? So like people were doing the same exercise in the chat as well, where they said like, ooh, I kind of want to do like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, right? You kind of want to give yourself the opportunity later down the line to do the exact same thing. So having those renders in your back pocket is going to allow you to do that. But I would not get picky at this point at all. It's more just like, hey, we're going to try out some stuff. Cool, it looks better than it did before. We're going to move on to like the crucial stuff, right? Filling it up, working on the tool itself and the stuff that actually matters to the project, right? Make a note of the settings so it's easier to go back to. No, I don't even do that. Because this kind of comes down to like personal preferences, right? But I hate being very petty, or like not petty, that's not the right word, but like very specific with the settings that I use. I look at it from like an artistic perspective, right? I look at it from like a higher viewpoint, and I'm just like, oh, in that render, like the shadows were more blue, so I'm just gonna go in and tweak the shadows to be more blue. Because it's not about the numbers, it's about the way that it looks, right? If you want to do that in like, let's say in a production setting, right, you have to pitch that to an art director, and you want to keep note of those like 3 different ways that you lit it so that you can always go back to it. Sure, you can. But for a personal project, I don't really do that. Yeah. As you said, Cole. Exactly. Yeah, because it's not about precision, right? Like those numbers don't need to be precise. It's just, yeah, we're just having fun with it. And then later down the line, when it's literally like, oh, final parts of the project, we're going to be spending a whole bunch of time tweaking the parameters so that they're like nice and juicy, right? But now it's about like changes that have a big effect on the project. Cool, but thank you all so much for your vote, and thank you, Mfal, for sharing it as well. So we got a winner now, and hopefully we get like a clear plan for the road too. But yeah, this stuff is going to be really cool to see come together, so looking forward to the next update, Mfal. Thank you for sharing your work. Next one up for today is Justin. Do we even have Justin here? Justin is not in the lineup. Why not? Oh, he is. Oh, interesting. Okay, let me fix that real quick. We're gonna have to yeet some of this stuff. What are the things that we're looking at? Doo-doo-doo. I think these two are like duplicates, so let's go. So Justin, let's have a look at your work, buddy. First of all, I do have to say, great work on already clearing up of a lot of the visual noise that we were having. It is definitely getting better. Like, we're getting a better read of the whole situation, and I think the lighting helped a lot in that as well. There are still areas, for example, here in the run-up. In the run-up where you kind of want to have like a clear path. Right, so this is going to be like your path. There's still like a bunch of like noise. That just makes it like really annoying to like read on the floor here, so. But overall, ooh, there's some intense lighting going on here. Maybe I didn't grab the latest one. Oh, I did. Okay, so that would be another thing to look at. Yeah, because that is like really highlighting this like little edge here. So yeah, let's get into your questions. Just not like flying to things all the time. So number one question is lighting. What are your thoughts towards my approach in using warm lighting to make the bell silhouette stand out from the focal point? So I think it's great, right? Like you've grounded it in some sort of reality, right? Like, this is a torch, makes sense. Cool. You got a torch on the opposite side as well, which is extinguished. Cool. This makes sense, right? It's a very logical approach to things, and you've embedded it into the world. That really makes this area stand out, because think about color theory, right? The sneak peek that I gave before, contrasting colors, or like complementary colors in this case, where you have your oranges and your blues, having them contrast with each other is going to make something stand out more. And I like that it's kind of subtle as well. So you're not hitting me over the head with it, which is an additional bonus in my opinion. So yeah, I really like it. So the way that this stands out now, you're starting to get like really, really nice. So that's a great job. Number two, let's see. So the focal point, I reused my debris kit to make some 3D moss and place them on the columns as well. Is this a good approach to help add more definition to my detailing? Wait, so I reused some of my debris kit to create 3D moss. To create 3D moss? Oh, here. Is that what we're looking at? No, right? Oh, I think it might be. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. No, that is like totally not effective in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't even look like moss, right? It just feels like really cheap. I would honestly just say spend a little bit of time making like good looking moss, or even just get like moss from wherever you can get it, right? But this just doesn't look good. It looks like really cheap. It kind of feels like an old school game, you know, where they didn't have the budget to do like really cool looking moss, but they just, I don't know, they just made some rocks green, and they kind of were like, that's all we can do for now. So it feels cheap. So we would have to make or find some good moss. Because I do like the idea, right? Because this cave is like really wet, so having some moss in there can be like very effective. But yeah, if you really start zooming in, this is just not looking good, right? It just doesn't convey it doesn't convey what moss looks like. So yeah, we need to find like a better way of dealing with that for sure. And also think about like where moss grows, right? So I think in general, what we really need to hit here is we need to make and find good moss, and we need to find references. We need to actually have a look at where moss grows, what moss looks like, look for specific caves that kind of have like some sort of moss growing, right? And what that looks like and how it looks like and where it gathers as well. Because usually moss thrives on moisture, right? So it's a perfect setting. However, it's not going to be spread evenly across the surfaces. So what we'll usually see is like it will grow in like crevices, right? Because that's where like moisture gathers, right? So you will have like these crevices that are just like filled with like bits of moss, but then you don't have them on the rest of the pillars because yeah, they're like in open spaces, right? And that creates this beautiful contrast where you kind of have a lot of details in like the crevices, but you have the majority of the surfaces, again, rest versus noise, right? You have those surfaces look really clean. So having that contrast is going to help a lot with the readability of the scene again. And it's going to cluster it like very logically in places where moss is going to happen. So moss is not going to do this. Right, so moss is not going to do this. Moss is going to do something like that. And that's where references come in, right? Like that's why we do the research, and that's why we spend extra time into really thinking about like, okay, like how does moss grow? Like where does moss come from? Like what type of conditions like does moss thrive in? Like all that kind of stuff. And we need to apply that to kind of everything we do, right? Because that knowledge, that like foundational knowledge that we get from our references, that is going to help us make way better environments, right? And you kind of build up this like visual library over time, and that's going to help you over the long term. All right. Also, looking at the moss, you're now making me realize that a lot of this stuff is kind of the same thing. Again, have a look at how rubble collects. In your references, right? Because usually they're not going to be sunken into it, or if they're going to be sunken into it, it's going to be sand, right? Or some sort of like very loose material that is going to be blending with the main surface. So what that means in our context is, let's say, what are we going to do here? So we have our surface, and let's say we have like a piece of rock, right? Like a boulder, like came crashing down from the surface. Cool. How do we then transition that into like our plane, right? So what we then do is we have like smaller rocks like next to it to kind of help us in that transition, right? And we're doing some acid clustering, but then that transition can be helped with having a pile of dirt and then having decals to support that transition from your pile of dirt. So what that looks like from like a top-down perspective, if we're really simplifying it, is you have your decal, or you even have like your terrain, right? Or your base surface. Then you have a decal that kind of transitions into your dirt mound, and then that dirt transitions into stone. Right? So that's the transition that we want to see. So if we then tag that here, so number one is just like your base terrain. Then we have like those decals here. Number three is going to be that dirt section here. And then we have number 4, which is going to be like the stones on top of it, right? And that creates like a nice transition between all the surfaces, because now what we're doing is we're trying to jump from like 1 to 4 without having anything in between. And that's not going to look good. Same thing with the moss, right? The same thing can be applied to the moss, where you will have meshes, right? But then we will have to have supporting textures or vertex painting to kind of massage the base mesh in this case with the moss mesh, right? We need to build a transition there. Through decals, through vertex painting, it's kind of dependent on like situations. But yeah. Let's see. Forgot one question I wanted feedback on. So number 3 in your questions is rain detail adding to your environment. Does it help in illustrating the mood of the environment, or does it add too much noise? Oh, the rain? Like this kind of stuff? That? I didn't even notice. I think it's like completely unnecessary for the type of environment that you want to tell. I think what could be interesting is that you have like individual drops, right? I think maybe you'll see it better in the video. I don't know. Okay, so you added a video. Okay. So let me see if I can show like the video here as well. Let me just switch it over here. So you can kind of see like the different like streaks of rain coming down, right? I think it doesn't add too much noise. It just doesn't add like a whole lot in general. I think it's kind of laid out in like a very generic way. What I would do is use that, but in like a couple of specific spots, right? And then we can start playing with the actual connection between the rain coming in and then the pools gathering at the bottom, right? So you have this pool, which is very annoyingly placed. I'll tell you why. This pool is going to be leaking from here, right? And this is what I mean when I look at things from like a very high perspective, or like a very, very high level, is that pool down there is like annoyingly placed, because if I want to build some interaction with it, so let's say I want to have like rain coming down, then it's going to cover my main asset that I want people to focus on, right? So I would think about having a smaller pool here potentially, because that kind of goes out of the way. And I can kind of build something really cool there by not adding too much of a distraction on top of the main focal point, right? So we don't really want to be doing this all too much. In general, we want to keep our focus on the focal point as much as possible. But in general, we can still use the effect, right? And just having it in the background like a couple of times could be really cool. Just not in front of the focal point, right? And again, like I want to emphasize, think about cause and effect, right? So if you have stuff coming down, I want to see that visually played out on the bottom as well. So yeah. Cool, thanks Justin. Best of luck. Andrea is asking a question. So what about adding stalactites? That could be interesting. I think from like a broad perspective, again, there's a lot of noise already. So I wouldn't add like anything new in it. From that perspective, right? It could be cool, but then it kind of depends on the placement and like, yeah. Basically, from a broad perspective again, if you want to add stalactites, right? Let me see. So This is basically the area that you can add them without interfering with the rest of the frame, right? So that would be an option. You just have to add them here. Cool. Thank you, Justin. Let's move swiftly on. So we got Alvin in the chat. Let's see. Alvin is working on this cool little teacup. I love the improvements that we're seeing here. Cool little details like this. Let me know of any final tweaks or suggestions that you think would improve the piece. Otherwise, I will be moving on to the floor, walls, and the beams. So you made this realization yourself, and that's also why I don't want to give like any feedback on this, because of one reason. I know that you're going to show it off, and you mentioned this yourself, right? Where you kind of use it as like a benchmark piece, which is fine. But that is how big it is in the final scene, right? So especially at that distance, more than enough detail on it. And even in your second camera, where we go like a little bit deeper here, still pretty tiny, right? So like all the details that you've put into it, can't really see it. So from that perspective, let's just keep moving on rather than spending a bunch of time on like an asset like this, right? What we can do, the reason, or like the way that I would preferably do it is, let's say at the end when everything is done, you then have this idea of like, hey, this is going to be my hero prop. Then we can push it further, right? Because it depends on the context of the scene. But I wanna give like a slight warning for people that might be watching this. This is sort of like a dangerous technique, because we're constantly trying to play like a technical or like a mind game with ourselves, right? And what can happen in this situation, and what happened with me like a ton of times, is that you work on something really cool and you're like really zoomed in, and then you zoom out and you still have to do like 98% of the scene, and it's like, oh, demotivating, right? So we kind of want to focus on keeping momentum and just making big changes on the scene, and then just work smaller and smaller over time, right? Now, sometimes there are cases where having a benchmark asset like this can be really helpful, because then you can be like, hey, this is gonna be my my target for the scene, right? And that's also the intent that was intended here by Alvin. So I think that has a purpose. You just have to watch out for everyone that this is not like a thing that you run into. Cool, yeah. Nothing really to add on here, Alvin. I think the changes that you've done are looking really great. I love the way that you have textured this. You got some like really cool detail underneath here. Yeah. I would move on to the bigger stuff in the scene. How would you go about the books, Tim? Surely not all unique? No, you just make an atlas with like a bunch of book covers, and then you reuse like the internal pieces of the book, maybe recoloring them, but I don't think that's necessary. So what that could mean is, if we do like a quick sketch, is you just like have like a big texture here, and you just say like, hey, this is gonna be cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, let's say cover 4, cover 5, and then just like the internals, right? Where you have like all the individual pages, and that's it. Now you just have like an atlas that you can use for your books. And then it just comes down to like mapping them all on there, right? I mean, you have to take care of like the edges and all that kind of stuff too, but that is the base way that you set it up. Because it's really efficient, right, in this way. And then you can have like one texture for books, one texture for magazines, kind of swap them independently from each other. Yeah, it's really flexible, because what you could do is, let's say even if, let's say you have like a whole library and you realize that like, ooh, this one texture is not going to be enough. Dang it. What you can then do is just keep the same UV maps in the same books and just make like a new texture with the same layout and just replace the materials, right? So it's just reusing resources in like a more effective way. Cool. Thank you, Alvin. Connor B is saying it looks very cozy though. I stopped by for a tea and a book club. Yeah. Yeah, it looks really cozy. Andrea is coming in and saying, I remember a music artist said he had to teach himself to think big picture and focus on small details. It has improved his workflow. Hearing it helped me with my project. Oh yeah, 100%. I think that is the most efficient way of working, right? Because, and most of the stuff that I say has like years of me like bashing into that wall myself, right? Where I was always like, oh my God, I'm gonna do this. First, always a big mistake that I made is I'm gonna do giant pieces. Dang it, I can't do that. Okay, try another thing. Dang it, I can't do it. Try another thing. Dang it, I can't do it. Okay, cool. Kind of learned my lesson now. What was the next lesson? It was exactly the lesson, right? Like, okay, I went the complete opposite. I was like, oh, I can't focus on like a big picture. Okay, cool. So I'll do like a small asset. But then I always wanted to do little dioramas and stuff. And then I would spend so much time on a singular asset and then zoomed out. And I would be like, oh God, I still need to do like, I don't know, 6 other assets. And I spent like a couple of weeks on this one already, by example, right? So honestly, most of the stuff that I'm saying on these feedback sessions is basically trying to keep your mental sanity, right? Because that is the biggest opponent when we're working on our own personal work or when you're trying to get into the industry. It's just we need to set you up for success with projects that kind of match your skill set, because those kind of have like the most degree of being successful, right? That's also why the first talk that I did was about like how to start environments, right? Because we need to find a match for what we want to do. And that also includes like thinking big and then working from small. But that could be interesting to dive into actually for like a next talk, like talking about like how to efficiently build an environment. That would be cool to look into as well. All right. Let's move on to the next one. So Dylan is asking for feedback in a nice and organized way. I love it. Shape and function of the bunker. So in reference to the previous feedback given. Oh yeah, because I remember last time we kind of went with like this whole bunker kind of feel, right? So that is looking really cool, really menacing. What I would honestly do at this point is emphasize the 2 main bunkers, right? So you kind of have like this section coming up here. It would be cool if we emphasize the towers, right? Because from just like a silhouette perspective, this makes it like more menacing than what you had before, where it is almost like a flat concrete block. If you make these things stand out, these are just like, yeah, big watchtowers, right? So they kind of add like a menacing element to the whole environment. So that could be interesting to add. But the rest of it, I like the adjustments that you've done. We kind of have like some of these like overhangs going on here as well, which is really cool. Just like a protective measure. Kind of not allowing you to get onto like the walls at some point. So yeah, I think number 1 has been successful. The second question is the area above the door, it still feels out of place. Yeah, honestly, these holes, I think they're like completely unnecessary. And maybe what you could do instead is just have like a lip. It kind of goes backwards or something. right? And then we get rid of this guy, right? Because the only thing, is that a lip as well? Yeah, that's a diagonal lip too. So that's all good. Honestly, the only thing that needs to be done if we're going like full brutalist is just having like some sort of number on here, right? Just, I don't know, let's grab a quick color. You get like one of these like really strong like old school colors, old school numbers, right? Just like a military designation, right? Not too much flair to it. That's honestly all you need. Like, you just need some like very vague I don't know, look into signage, right? Because I'm kind of thinking about like cool signage that you could have. Maybe there's something that we can stumble on here. But for example, I know that these flag towers, these were very popular in like Germany, right? Like during the war, where these were like freaking indestructible. And they housed like thousands and thousands of people, I think. And they had, the reason why they were built like this is because they had like all the air defenses like built right on top of them, right? So you can kind of see like these jetties, they used to house like huge like guns to protect air, right? But I also remember that they all had numbers. So they all had like specific numbers, or they were designated like, oh, this is like the Flakturm for this area, right? So playing around with the numbers and just like military signage could be very interesting to look into. So look for some references, because that's going to be really, really helpful there. But you just need like some very simple stuff, right? Some signage. Partially faded is going to add to like the whole nature. That's going to be cool. That is way bigger than I thought. The Manny on the left put this in perspective. Yeah, we have this little floating dude over here. Twink. This guy is creepy as hell. I just noticed him as well. Okay, we're just gonna put you behind the camera, you know? I don't wanna see your face. Cesar is saying, with concrete buildings you should look into whether it's prefabs or poured concrete too. You might see influence of molds like World War II, like German bunkers. Yeah, were they molded? Can't remember. I'm not too up to speed with that, but that could be, again, like really interesting to look into, right? Like, how were they built? Because that's going to influence like how they're made. Yeah, on the material. Yeah, I know that like a lot of them were just like reinforced concrete with like rebar stuff, and some of these bunkers were like a meter thick, you know, meter thick, just like solid like concrete reinforced, so that even a bomb would fall on them, they would like do nothing to like some of the more the crucial elements of the bunker. Some of them were like freaking nuts. So yeah, that could be very cool to look into. And then you can really play with just like additional elements like the lights that we talked about last time, and just have like streaks of like decay coming from them, right, to really add to the whole element. It's going to be sick. Let's see. So how do the materials in the scene feel at this stage? I'm planning to add RGB masks and decals later. I would say don't use RGB masks. I would use just like decals. Decals and vertex paint is all you need. I wouldn't make it like more complex than it needs to be by adding like RGB masks and all that kind of stuff, just have vertex paint and then just do the rest with like decals. That's what I would do. Because the cool thing that you could do with decals, for example, right, is you could have like a hole like this that literally has like the reinforced or like the rebar coming out of it. And then if you do some cool stuff with POM, you can actually add depth to it as well. So it kind of fakes like that it's actually like damaged in the wall, which could be like really interesting. So this sort of effect, like that depth of it, you could get that with decals too. But I would not make it super complex by adding like RGB masks, because RGB masks on this solid of an object is not, in my opinion, not even the right way of doing it. Because at a certain size, like you can't really rely on having like a unique texture, which is in essence what an RGB mask is, right? We're still going to be assigning like, I don't know, maybe this is the extreme example, right? Like one texture to this whole building. We're still going to run into like texture restrictions there, even if we're trying to be optimal. So, and the other option would be if we split it down into like modular pieces, but then like the RGB workflow is just going to be annoying because we have more pieces to work with, where we can honestly just use vertex painting. So I would go for vertex painting instead and just use decals on top of it. Skip the RGB masking. It's just, yeah, annoying and more complex than it needs to be. And the rest of the materials feel good, honestly. Like I like what I'm seeing here. Just apply them to the building ASAP, right? It kind of comes down to what we were saying before with Alvin's work, where you kind of want to focus on the big picture first, and a part of that is just getting things on there. Like if you have this cool material, set up, this takes 5 minutes to set up like a vertex painting between the bottom layer and the top layer. Get that on there. It's going to look sick, and it's going to give you like a way better impression of what you actually need to do compared to us talking about like a singular block, right? Because most of like these questions, right? So how do the materials feel in the scene is you putting the materials in the scene, in the actual scene. Right? And that's going to give you like a lot of context that you need at this point. And you can do that with everything, right? If you're wondering like, hey, how would this look? Get a quick test in as quick as you can, because then you have data to actually look at. How can I sell the idea of this place being abandoned a little bit better? More foliage on the overgrowth. I thought we talked about that last time. No? Didn't we? Kind of think we did. But I would honestly just have like more decay and just have like, you know, like literal streaks coming from like all these little edges, right? Because that's where water is going to gather and water is going to be pouring out of it too. And then just have like these, again, these floodlights. These floodlights are going to be rusted. They're going to be partially falling down. You know, that kind of stuff is gonna add a lot to it. And then you have some edges could even be like damaged, right? Where you say like, hey, most of it is tileables, but I'm going to do like one singular block as like a unique piece, and I'm going to sculpt it to kind of give the impression of, hey, this is actually like damaged. Right? And then the rest of it you can just do with like POM decals. Parallax occlusion mapped decals. Sorry, I need to get better with the acronyms here. But yeah, it's just if ever I say something that you can't understand, feel free to interrupt me and just ask in the chat, right? That's why we're here. I want to help you all get better at what you do. Phillip is saying maybe some ripped banners or flags could bring in some nice color contrast. Yeah, The issue with that is that we kind of want to get this like really somber, like brutalist feeling. I think what could be like more interesting in terms of like color contrast is just bringing in more of the foliage, right? And just have like lots of green, and then you have this like big, chunky, boring looking building in the middle. Think about The Last of Us, right? Like, I'm thinking like in terms of like color scheme, The Last of Us kind of colors, like the parts where you're outside, something like that. Cool. Thanks, Dylan. Three more. Faded graffiti could be cool as well. Yeah. Let's see. So Andrew. Yep. Andrew is over here. Specifically looking for feedback on these 4 new compositions. So I think you're talking about these guys, right? So, oh, there's one that I'm missing. Oops. Wait, so we don't even need to talk about this guy? Okay. Shame. So we're talking about this guy as well. So what we kind of want, we want to have like a transition between like all these shots, right? Looks like, can I just select that one, please? Thank you. So we kind of have to look at it as sort of like a timeline of shots, right? Just like exploration shots. So I love this shot. This shot is freaking awesome. Feels very cinematic. It really highlights the person's mood, right? Like we're getting an emotion from this shot, which is like freaking awesome. Then we get to like this part, right? So that one is freaking awesome. I love it. It's very cinematic. This one is really awesome too. So we're kind of trying to hit like a sense of wonder, but like a sense of like being alone as well. So like a nice contrast between the two. So there's like marvel, but also like a loneliness at the core of it, right? So I think in terms of that, these ones need like more work because they're not as impactful. Not as impactful and not as interesting compositing, compositionally wise, right? Like I have this imagination here where this is like your stereotypical like Wild West movie where you see this one lonely cowboy with his horse just like resting in the middle of the desert with a camp, right? That's what I'm imagining. So that's kind of what I want to see. And it's almost like a shot like you just have like a little campfire, and maybe there's like a bunch of rocks, and we're kind of like looking over like one of the rocks, and then he has like a little campfire here. I mean, the campfire would literally be this, right? I'm doing an analogy here. And then we have like this beautiful landscape in the back. Right, and then we can kind of apply the same for this. So here we're kind of doing like resting. Here he's looking at like a huge mountain, right? So in emotions, we're kind of talking about like, oh, I need to overcome that mountain, right? So that would be like challenge. That's what I'm getting from just looking at it, right? And then this one can maybe just be wonder, perhaps. But you see what I'm saying? Like all these like all these frames, they kind of tell something about like the mood that you're trying to set up, right? And I think the first one is effective, the last one is effective, but the rest in between is kind of lacking in what you want me to do, or like what you want me to look at, really, right? And that usually comes down to you trying to be smart, right? Because you don't want to make like a whole new scene or like a whole new composition and all that kind of stuff for these ones. So either it is just like, hey, I tried to make like a couple of really sick scenes, like potentially this one, or yeah, you need to find like another way to make this work. I think this one can be like really interesting, and then it would be like a composition of 3, right? So you have loneliness, or like yeah, just like the feeling of like scale, right? You feel like small, you feel like by yourself, and then you have like a peaceful rest in the middle of the night, and then you make it back to his camp. Those 3 could be enough, but then I would spend more time on this one to kind of make it to that level of this one and this one, because those are really kick-ass. Hope that makes sense. Let's see. So what else is there? So one pain point is the rock pile on the left, which is kind of like a pain point. So you're talking about these guys here, right? I think the reason why that is a pain is because they're so contrasty, right? Because you have literally a face that is like in the sun, and then you have like a face that's in the shadow, right? So we need to reduce the contrast. Which was your observation, I think, as well, right? Too distracting. Yeah, the way that I would do this is either go in and add like another rock that kind of is somewhat aligned to like the sunny side of the surface so that we're getting less shadow, or just rotate this whole thing and make sure that a bigger part of the surface actually is in the sun. The reason why I'm being so specific is because I want to reduce the amount of contrast that there is, especially between the brighter points and the darker points, right? So by rotating it more into the sun, we're reducing the amount of contrast that there's going to be because of the shadow side, right? And that can be applied to like any of these guys. Plus also, you can honestly potentially get rid of this one and it would still be fine, and then do the same thing on these 2 guys. Right, because they're the biggest culprits then. So, yeah. That's what I would suggest. And then... And while I can see the difference... So you're talking about like this value composition now that we have at the bottom. Let me keep an eye on the chat. Sorry. Lost track there. Untitled is saying, hi, how are you? I'm doing good, Untitled. Thank you so much for coming in and saying hi. Hope you're doing well as well. Shazar is saying you should have a look at NASA art. Feels like some of the paintings from Ren Wicks. I have no idea what that is. That would be cool though. Let me make a note of that. Where's my pen? Ren Wicks. That is cool. Thank you so much for the suggestions, Shazar. And then Cole is saying for the rest in quotes, you could have something or someone at the horizon as a potential threat, looking pretty far away, but since the character has their back to it, that could be cool. But like that is setting you up for like a completely different emotion, right? So I think the purpose here is just focused on space, right? Where we're focusing on a singular person exploring a planet that mankind has never set foot on, right? So the overarching emotion there is loneliness, right? Like loneliness and yeah, just like insignificance, I would say, just in relation to the planet. So then adding, I don't know, adding like a potential threat in there is just, I mean, you could do that, right? If you want to set that up as like maybe a horror or something like that. But yeah, in this series, like it seems like Andrew wants to take it more into like wonder and awe and yeah, how small we are compared to the rest. So in the value comparison thing, let's go back to the feedback. I don't know how to tell which one works better. Any input on how to interpret this and make the values work more strongly with the composition would be awesome. So you're literally talking about these two, right? So in terms of the values that we have in our painting, or like in our work. Well, here's the thing, right? Like it's a choice that you have to make, because everyone is gonna have like a bit of a different opinion on that. Because you could make the argument of, I like the contrast that is happening here. So that adds to how readable the shapes are, right? But I do like the atmosphere in here. And what I also do like about this one is that it's ever so slightly that the contrast in the foreground is different from the background. So it's adding to the separation of different layers, right? I would also lighten the foreground in the last picture to give it depth. I would do the opposite, because you usually, if you think about atmospheric perspective, right, the further something goes away, like usually the less saturated it becomes, right? Like the atmospheric perspective. Well, we're applying Earth rules to like a different planet, so I mean, everything's out of the window basically. But yeah, that's usually the way that it works, right? So yeah, this is honestly something that is just like personal opinion, I would say, because I tend to lean more towards the contrasty side. But then I do also like what's happening with the atmosphere side. But if I'm talking about my work, I focus more on like the fundamentals and I play with more stronger contrasts than other people do. So it's your choice. That's I can give you what I think and then you run with it, Andrew. Cool. Next up is Phillip. Phillip is working on a new sci-fi laboratory. I'm still exploring the right sci-fi style, whether to go for a cleaner alien look or a darker, grittier aesthetic. I'm also considering how futuristic and retro-inspired I want to be. At the moment, I'm at the very beginning of the project, so nothing is set in stone. Any ideas, changes, or inspirations are welcome. This is pretty broad, right, Phillip? I'll say most of that stuff comes down to your interests. Right? Because you're going to be the person who has to make this. So let's say if I say, oh, you should definitely go for like more futuristic because that stuff is awesome. That is based on my opinion, right? And that's not going to help you make better work. So you kind of just have to go with like what you like and then use that as a basis to work from, right? Because what I like, if we're talking about like futuristic stuff, is like the near future. So imagining what like agriculture could look like in the near future or something like that, right? I'm a big fan of like I don't know, like hydroponics, all that kind of stuff. I built like my own hydroponic thing like a couple of years back. So I've even built like a sci-fi thing that was like really inspired with like all those technologies. So I kind of made like a bio research lab where they do like agricultural testing to make like, I don't know, the best versions of plants that they can make. So that is sort of like where I latch onto, right? Because I find that stuff like really fascinating, because to a certain degree, we're living in it already, but it's kind of like still hidden away. But a lot of the tech already is around. So you can pull like a lot of really interesting things from reality, right? But like I said, honestly, most of that stuff comes down to what you want to make. So yeah. That's kind of all I have to say on this, Philip. It's kind of up to you at this point. Like, make sure that it's kind of something that aligns with like your values. And if you're confused on what I mean by that, right? Like, go check out the video that we did 2 weeks ago talking about like how to start an environment. This is going to be crucial to look into, right? Yeah. You're trying to narrow it down so I get clarity on what direction I want to go in. I think that's good, right? Keep looking until you find something that really interests you, that really aligns with like what you want to do. And if this takes a little bit of time, don't worry about it. Take that time, because yeah, this is the easy part, right? Like spending like another week on like really refining what you want to do is going to save you a bunch of stuff, like a bunch of time when you actually get to the execution part, right? Because if we're doing like a rough translation, right? And this is basically the reason why we have concept artists. Well, it's a big reason of why we have concept artists, right? It's because they're way quicker at executing, and it saves us like a whole bunch of time. So let's say like 1 week spent in concept art can be related to, I don't know, depending on the project and depending on the complexity, can be 10 weeks of 3D, right? I'm talking about like a production environment, and I'm giving like a throwaway example. But just to indicate that like if you spend like 1 week now trying to get like the good fundamentals in place, that can potentially cause you to save like a whole bunch of time later on. So spend that time and really, yeah, really take your time with it. But yeah. Cool, Philip. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm curious to see this coming along though. I'm curious to see what you're gonna pick. Yeah. Also, right now, I'm mostly thinking about the room layout to create the right atmosphere and feeling. So I wouldn't worry about that yet if you haven't found like the style that you want to go for. Because you're thinking about, so we have like our pyramid, right? And you're in this layer and you're like, I'm not really sure. But you're already working on this layer. What happens is if this layer changes, right? The stuff that you do it now could be redone, right? So I would, it's fine to do like quick little blockouts and stuff, right? But try to do them quick and try to do like a variety of them. So let's say one is like more gritty and grimy and like horror inspired, and one is more like futuristic, like optimism inspired, and another one could be, oh, maybe I want this kind of spin on like sci-fi, or maybe I'm doing steampunk now, you know? Try to do a lot of iterations and then see which one you like the most. Go Geiger style. In all seriousness, pick something that you can stick with for at least a month without being bored. Yeah, at least a month. I mean, you're gonna get bored. That's a guarantee. It's just how you deal with that, right? So you can set yourself up to kind of push through that with your environment around you, right? So for example, I mean, we're not going to go into it too deep, but having like specific playlists that you listen to, having like specific desktop background, having people that help you stay accountable, I don't know, optimizing the workflow that you use, like all that kind of stuff can really help in just pushing through like the boring stuff, because yeah, it's meant to keep you motivated. But yeah, that is also a topic for a future talk as well, because I have a lot of thoughts about that one too. Cool. Philip, thank you so much and best of luck. And then last one for today is Unbearably. Unbearably? Sorry. Unbearably. There we go. Cool little project. Also, welcome to the community. It's lovely to have you. Got a new member here, so let's see. My senior project portfolio from my college, it's a stylized 3D 3D environment inspired by island cultures of the Philippines and other similar cultures. This is my progress through the midterm so far. I've got until early May to get this bad boy as polished as I can get it to be. I'm currently planning to refine the rocks, do the foliage, find a good excuse to add smaller colors of red, orange, and purple in the scene. Probably through colors and decorations on the huts. Yeah. I think that's a good shout. Just having like, I mean, you've got like a bunch of fabric here already, right? Like the easiest thing to do, you just make all this stuff red, right? Or different colors. And then you got your color accent there. Because that's where you want it as well, right? Because that's going to be your focal point. So that would be perfect. And the reason why I say red is because you're surrounded by a sea of blue, right? So that would be like the ideal scenario. Just like pick a contrasting color and make it stand out that way. Connor B is saying hot cocoa as a treat when you complete a part of the process has been the move for me lately. It's cold again. Yeah. See, but that kind of stuff is super important, right? I can guarantee you now, like the biggest change that I've done to my room is having lights. Like a couple of years ago, we bought like U lights. I think it was during the pandemic, and I was like, well, if I'm going to spend so much time at my desk, I might as well spice it up a little bit. And they've been so helpful. So I have like a couple of presets where one of them is concentrate, one of them is chill, one of them is gaming, all that kind of stuff. And whenever I need to get into a certain zone, I switch the colors. And that has been so helpful because I know when I need to concentrate, like I can just put that on. Like Andrea's saying, like music is also like a huge help, and being cognizant of what music does to you and what kind of genre of music that you need for the style of work that you want to go for. So what I oftentimes do is I will listen to music that I can't understand. So that is really helpful in terms of I can't get distracted by the lyrics, but I still have like someone singing, right? And that's been really helpful for keeping me focused, because otherwise I kind of get distracted by someone that I can understand like singing about it, right? So that's been really helpful. Let's see. Yeah, podcast for boring tasks. If I need to creatively focus, I'll put on some like just like droney type of music, or even like no music at all. Italian pop? No, German metal is my go-to now. There's like a couple of bands that I have there. We Are Book is saying lo-fi, synthwave, music scores. Yeah, all that kind of stuff is really good for kind of staying in the zone, right? When I need to get shit done, I go back to my roots and I listen to thrash metal, right? Because I know the lyrics, I kind of know it. It's kind of like my comfort zone. And I listen to like very high octane, like upbeat, like thrash metal to get stuff done, right? So that's usually when I'm stressed and I need to get stuff done, I put that on. But Andrea's saying, if I get bored or demotivated, I sometimes remind myself how cool the end result would be, and then I procrastinate. Yeah. So that is a typical case of like, and this is so hard. I kind of want to be able to formulate a way of how we can actually get into the zone, but what I'm talking about is it is not necessarily about the end result. It's about all the steps that you get there. But that is so hard to realize when the end result is the major thing that you need for your portfolio, right? And it took me a long time to realize that as well. Like metal? Yeah! Love listening to metal and EDM when I work. As of late, it's been the 70s, because I feel like I'm on acid. See, but that is really interesting, right? So, like, specific genres of music put us in, like, specific moods, right? And you can kind of, like, I use music as, like, oh, I'm in this sort of mood. I need to use this music to kind of, like, offset that mood, because I don't want to be in that mood, right? Whereas sometimes what happens is that we just are in a mood and then we listen to music that enhances that mood or even makes it worse, right? And I don't want to be doing that most of the time necessarily. Depends on the mood. But yeah, there's so many cool tricks there. So many cool tricks. Cool. But let's see. So I appreciate any and all advice and suggestions. My suggestion for next time Unbearably is come up with a list of things that we want to talk about. You're new to the community, right? So this is completely normal. But I ask everyone to come up with a couple of questions to say like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Let me know how I can help. Because otherwise, either you get like barely any feedback or you get like really like unguided feedback, right? Scattershot approach. Don't necessarily want to be doing that. Cool. So, but I think what we already talked about, so like the color accents, right? So something to create like contrast here is gonna help a lot as well. Potentially, I'm thinking about this big rock here, right? Because I do kind of like it. But it also means that like this silhouette doesn't get to stand out as much as it can, apart from this like cool little fish. Let's see, I don't necessarily mind it that much. And this composition is like really nice where you have like the foreground and then you have like your midground is where all the focus needs to go. And then you have like your background already sorted. So composition wise, like it's really well laid out already. You could potentially have like some smaller rocks just reusing like in the background. Or it can also be interesting, you kind of have this like beautiful curve here too. Kind of just filling that up with like more trees. To kind of break that up again. Right, and then have like the occasional tree down here, which is fine. And then the big thing here, the big thing that we want to do is we kind of want to make like the most use of this cool little path that you've made for yourself, right? Which is really awesome. What we can do is clear up some of these rocks so that you can see the path like going all the way down there. That could be interesting. And then having definitely like a better definition of the path itself, where you have a different texture for where you want people to look. So where people walk is going to be slightly different texture compared to the beach texture that you have going on, right? And then you kind of have like these nice layers. They almost remind me of like rice fields. So that's where the population could be growing like their food, right? That could be really cool. And then maybe we could play around with some additional elements of, yeah, what this is going to be, right? Because it kind of looks like it's a bar of sorts. What could then be cool is we try to make this like, we're trying to add like more character to this place, right? So what that means is we could have like all these like cool little lights and cool little lanterns, and then we could make this into like the party spot. And it can also help us define this place more. So if we pick another layer, because we want to give it some, let's see. I just need to see where we're going to be connecting this, right? Ooh, and then what would be interesting is that we have like a little dock, because we have like all these boats coming around the corner, which is like nice compositionally. But it would also be cool if we have like a dock area, because then this makes it feel like, oh, this is a place where people go and they actually dock in this area. And then they kind of visit like the party destination or whatever you want to make of it, right? But then you could kind of start hanging like a bunch of these things like all over the place. Right. But yeah, just think about like a couple of questions. Like we're gonna end on that. So what's the purpose of this building? Because we have like a fish on there, but I'm not sure if it's like a fishery or if the fish is like the local thing that it's like their local symbol or whatever, right? So what's the purpose of the building or the function? Who lives there? Who visits? And a bunch of other questions that you can ask yourself. But what we basically want to do is like, we want to ask these questions to add character to this place. Right? We want to make it more unique, because right now, apart from like, you know, the architectural style is like pretty unique, but apart from the fish on top of there, like we're not really getting a hint at what this is, right? That's where I would start for this one. Then we have like a bunch of like cool other things as well that we discussed. So like the rice fields, kind of fleshing things out. And then you can, whatever you create, right? Like if you're really smart with reuse, we can then start reusing that for like other people as well. So let's say this house is for the farmer. This house is like the party destination or like a fishery, and people come and collect their fish there or whatever. And then this one could be like a different house. And we try to give like little bits of unique flavor to like each house, because then everyone kind of has like their own function. And it kind of feels like a society that we're getting into, right? Yeah. Cool. I hope that was helpful, Unbearably. And then welcome again to the community. I've not said it before, but this is already looking like really, really good. So I love what I'm seeing here. I love the passion that you bring to the table. So keep it up, and looking forward to the next updates. Yeah. Let's switch it back. So Alvin is saying, I put on music that corresponds to my goals. Metal when I know what I need to do and just need to do it. Game OSTs when I want to think and contemplate on the bigger picture stuff, etc. Yeah, that's sort of the way that I do it as well. And then sometimes you'll just have like random moments when it's just like, I don't know, maybe nothing's jiving, or yeah, I don't know, nothing's really working. That could happen as well. Connor B is saying, I need an intro into metal music, I guess. Never got into it, but all the metalheads I know are great people. There's something to it. I'll tell you what it is. At least for me, when I was growing up, there's some sort of like release that you get from listening to metal. Like it's a very, to me, it's always been like a way of expressing like some of emotions that were like generally something that I didn't want to express, right? So what that means is like I used to go to like metal concerts, and I would go into the mosh pits and all that kind of stuff, and it was like a way to like physically get the frustrations and the anger and all that kind of stuff out. And it sounds like super aggressive, right? But there's probably going to be people in the chat as well that are metalheads themselves. They know that probably like one of the most community focused places that you can go to is just like a mosh pit. That's yeah, that's one of the best places. Like the sense of community in a mosh pit is so good. Metalheads are nice people cosplaying as mean. Yeah, yeah. I think that's there's something to it for sure. Hey, Bikes! It's been a while. I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Man, I haven't seen this channel pop up on my YouTube for quite some time. Yeah, we're quite niche, huh? Quite niche. I mean, we're growing though. Like, we're getting up to like 21,000 people, which is like freaking amazing. Thank you all so much for the support, by the way. I don't really say it all that much, but it's freaking awesome to have you all here, and I appreciate all of it. There were studies done about how metal has helped people feel euphoria because it was definitely a way to release frustration. Yeah, I think so. And I don't even want to say that I had like a lot of frustrations growing up, because that's kind of, I don't know. But there was definitely something that was, yeah, like locked away, I guess, or something that I couldn't or wouldn't talk about publicly. For example, like being bullied like a lot, you know? I've been blessed by having like a freaking crooked eye, and that was always a point of being bullied. So probably that was like a way for me to get rid of that frustration from that, potentially. But yeah, most of it was just also because I freaking loved it, you know? It was really, really nice to just be in a mosh pit, and especially with like smaller bands, you get to talk to the band, you get to sit on the stage. Like there's moments where I crowd surfed on top of like the stage with like the band being there and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's like a wild, chaotic atmosphere that is only what would I say it? Like, yeah, there's a wild, chaotic atmosphere that is being held in check by the people that are there. Because no one really wants to hurt anyone, right? But we're doing this like violent dance together, and then if someone gets hurt or something goes wrong, like people are like really, oh no, shit, this happened. Oh, let me help you, you know? For the most part. I would say 95% of the people, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, there's so many genres. So even if I wanted to give you like an intro to metal, Connor, man, where would I even go? Kind of depends, right? Like you can start with like the classics, like Metallica, like Iron Maiden and AC/DC and all that kind of stuff, right? And then kind of work your way into it. But yeah, there's so many genres now, and there's also like so many genres that are now blending with more common genres now, right? Like EDM or techno or whatever you want to call it. Like there's so many blends happening now, which is really interesting. Metal concerts are mostly a really nice place to be. Yeah. I always had a lot of fun. I used to have this bet with my best buddy that if there was no mosh pit, we would start one. So most of the time, we were just like instigating the mosh pit. There were also like a couple of scary times where we went to like a bunch of like metal hardcore festivals, and especially in the Netherlands. Yeah, that crowd, I'm not going to say people, but that crowd definitely enjoyed their drugs. So we were surrounded by a bunch of like jacked, like I'm talking like my size, like I'm almost like 1.90 meters, my size, but like, you know, fully built out of muscle and just high on whatever drug. And they were in the same mosh pit, just like, yeah, doing whatever. That was a little bit scary, but for the most part, it's really fun. Folk metal is always really good. Yeah, seen a lot of, what did they call it again? Ailstorm. Ailstorm was always really fun because you would just get like random bottles of like rum in the mosh pit. Like people would be dressed in like full pirate outfits with like parrots on the shoulders and everything, and they would like sneak in bottles of rum so that you could just have a party in the mosh pit, you know? Always really fun. Always enjoyed my time. Like on like the hundreds of hundreds of like festivals that I've been to. I still have like an envelope with like all my with all my concert tickets. I still have all of them around. I need to find that envelope. But I still have like a full drawer of like CDs as well. So like, I mean, this is just a sample. What do we have here? Astral Doors, Evanescence, In Flames. What is this? Oh, there's some Johnny Cash in here as well. Chimera, Iron Maiden, War Beast, local band, Master Plan, first band that I ever saw live. When was this? When did this come out? 2010. Fucking hell. Jesus Christ. Do you still have all your concert t-shirts? No. Well, most of them, but like the thing that I was the most proud of is I had like a shirt with like a bunch of patches on, right? So I had like a non-sleeve like leather jacket, like a black one, and I had like all the patches from like my favorite bands on it. And for one concert, we left that behind in the car because it was gonna get like freaking roasting in there. We left that behind in the car, and the car got burglared and it got stolen. Still remember that to this day. We came back, they smashed in like the rear, like the trunk window, and they ran off with it. Assholes. A metal cover of Johnny Cash might be fire. Yeah. There's yeah, bummer. I know. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, I know. It was it was really cool. Yeah, but I think I still have like a bunch of my shirts. Yeah. But they're just always like this really thick like fabric, you know, and just like really hot always. Like, ugh. But yeah, I have other trinkets that I keep around, like my CD collection of like, I don't know, like 200 CDs that I keep dragging from country to country for no reason because I never play any of them anymore, you know? Oh. But yeah, good times. Bike is saying, man, I miss game art so much. I actually switched to videography within the company. I did CAD modeling. I wish I have time for game stuff again, but I have way too many hobbies. Well, it sounds like you got priorities straight, right? Like, I have one shirt that survived, thankfully not that thick of cotton. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I think I must have like 20 of them or something like that. Because when I started making money, I was doing like student jobs and all that kind of stuff, working in the weekends. Like that's where my money would go to. I would talk to the band members after the shows and I would buy like a t-shirt. So many bands that I've seen over time. Like, man, we used to have like this beautiful like festival in Belgium called Grass Pop Metal Meeting. And they would have like all the big metal bands there. So I've seen a lot of them. Like, I've seen like all the classics, like all of them. Yeah, I've seen a lot of them. I don't think right now there's not a band that I still need to or want to see because I went to so many like venues. So yeah, blessed in that regard for sure. But yeah, I need to dig up my t-shirts. I think a bunch of them are still like on the attic with my parents or something like that too. But yeah, most of them were that like, ugh, that thick cotton. So don't need them anyway. All right, people. We're gonna be rounding down here. Andrea saying the way things have become due to the digital ownership is slowly becoming an issue. I've had people tell me to get hard copies of games and such. I really want to get like a vinyl player. Oh yeah, you were at so many Parkway Drive concerts. Yeah, Parkway Drive is like the favorite band of my partner. We've seen them. Well, I've seen them more than 5 times, but it was like. Yeah, mostly on concerts, and then we saw them in like a couple of venues as well. They're great. They're great. I still listen to them. Like they're definitely in the playlist. Like I need to get shit done, I'll listen to Parkway Drive. That's definitely in there. But yeah, Andrea, you've had a lot of people telling you to get like hard copies of games and such. I really want to get like a vinyl player. So I can see why they're saying that. But I mean, that's just like the society that we live in, right? Like, and yeah, there is some stuff that I'm like really nostalgic about myself as well. Where like going to like a CD shop, I used to do that all the time. Like when I had like lunch break, I would just walk into like the nearest CD shop and I would just browse for hours. That doesn't happen anymore. No one does that. I used to go like back alley CD shops that were specifically for metal CDs. They're all gone. So there's definitely like nostalgia like linked there, and now it's like it's easier with Spotify. But like you said, it's also easier to forget the stuff that you're listening to because there's not that like inherent value there. Yeah. Like most of the CDs like that I bought there, they just have like a significant value to me because I remember browsing for them, and like also with limited amount of money, it was like, okay, do I buy this one or do I get that one? But I want both of them. Shit, which one do I get? Ah. So yeah. So that's like a personal thing, right? Like if you want to get like hard copies of stuff, definitely get them. We used to have a vinyl player as well. We have like a bunch of vinyl stuff just because I love them. Like I love the look of them. For example, I don't know if I have them here. No, I think they're all downstairs. But yeah, I have the vinyl from like the soundtrack from No Man's Sky, which is beautiful. I love that soundtrack so much, so I bought it on vinyl. And it is beautiful as like a vinyl itself as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. We're just going into like new phases all the time, right? And like technology doesn't really show like a sign of like slowing down. So yeah. I don't want to be like my goal is I don't want to be like that old man just shouting at the clouds, right? And I have to like remind myself of like, hey, try to keep up with things, you know? Like don't be such like a nostalgia freak or whatever. All right. Enough chatting. It was nice hanging out with everyone. I'm gonna get cracking. But it was nice having you all here. You know what to do by now. I'm not gonna say it again. I'm just gonna wish you all a lovely evening, and I will see you all. When do I see you? When is the next time we will see each other? I think it's gonna be next Wednesday. I don't think we have anything else planned. So yeah, I'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for all the support in the chat as well. Good night, Tim. Really happy for you that Beyond Extent really is working out. Yeah. It is a labor of love, Bikes, and thank you so much for being a part of it as well. Like it's thanks to your support and like all the people that are here tonight and are part from the community. It's lovely to have you all. Yeah. Thank you all so much. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.